Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome to a bit of a special match of professional StarCraft 2. Here's the thing, if you watched SC2 back in like 2010 to maybe 2014 or so, both of these players' nicknames should be very familiar to you. However, I personally haven't seen a lot of games between either of these two, and truth be told, I only just now found out that our Terran player right over here decided to return to pro gaming recently, just a couple months ago. Anyways, before I ramble onwards, let's get started by introducing the players. And mind you, this is gonna sound like a 2012 introduction, okay? But spawning here in the southeast corner of King's Cove and playing with the blue Terran SCVs, we are looking inside of the main base of Bomber. I know he's a fan favorite, at the very least he was many years ago. And his opponent in the opposite corner, also a fan favorite, playing with the red Zerg drones. We are looking inside of the main base of Dong Ray Gu, DRG. Now what I'm curious about is whether or not either of them decides to play that really old school Zerg versus Terran style. So obviously for Terran, I mean, that's like Marine Medevac Siege Tank, not that much different I guess from what we see nowadays, but they would stick on Marine Siege Tank for basically the entirety of the game. And for Zerg obviously, Mutaling Bane was the key back in the day. We'll see if either of them decides to go for one of those strategies. So, I know that DRG has been playing again for about a half year or so at this point, okay? He has been once again climbing up on the ladder and he has been improving very rapidly once more. Now, like I mentioned, I had no idea that Bomber was even playing StarCraft again. I think either of them must have quit because of like the mandatory military service or maybe some other reason, but Bomber apparently has been playing once again as of a couple of months ago. Now, just because I was curious myself and just because I wanted to inform those of you who are unfamiliar with them, I decided to go on Wikipedia and check out what their results are throughout their career. So, I'll name you a couple of their victories, okay? And mind you, some of these are gonna sound very nostalgic, and you know, I have to prepare you for that because, man, I've been playing StarCraft for like 9 years, so some of these tournaments are no longer around. But anyways, so DRG. He has won a IEM New York back in 2011, a GSL Code S in 2012, an MLG Spring Championships in 2012 as well, and then a Red Bull Battlegrounds after that, which, I mean, especially those last two, and I guess IEM New York as well, right? Those are no longer around anymore. Bomber, though, he has won a GSL Code A against MVP, a WCS Season 2 versus Jaedong. I mean, Jaedong obviously now plays StarCraft 1 again, which is pretty crazy as well when you think about it. He has won a Red Bull Battlegrounds Atlanta, a Red Bull Battlegrounds Washington, and also a WCS America. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that in the time period of 2011 to 2014 or so, both of these players were extremely successful, but then decided to, well, quit pro gaming for one reason or another. Well, man, this Reaper, worth its weight in gold, an absolute nuisance here to that third base, and well, indeed, eventually it will go up with the Queen obviously arriving as well. You're always on a timer. Bomber certainly does still have the micro skills, but I honestly don't really know how good he is right now. I know that DRG, a lot of pro gamers have mentioned that he's gotten very good very quickly. I know that he's considered to be a really strong player already, but I have no idea about Bomber, so I guess we'll find out together. Now, I would be very surprised if this man were to play anything but what he's doing right here, okay? Going for that Marine-based style. Marine Siege Tank really was the name of the game, and while we did see some mech back in the day as well, the old-school mech style that we saw for many years in StarCraft was the mech army composition based around Siege Tanks and Thors and Vikings and all that, where the Terran players would literally just sit back for like 20 minutes, max out once, and then clash, right? Now, obviously, with the introduction of Legacy of the Void, a lot of the main bases, as well as like the future expansions as well, they all have far less resources. So back in the day, all of these mineral patches just simply had more resources, allowing Terran players especially to drop mules for a really long time and to basically not push until much later. With Legacy of the Void, they decided to reduce the resource count in all of the bases, forcing players out onto the map. And I still think, to this date, that was one of the best changes they've ever made to StarCraft, just because right after that, the games became way more action-packed as you just simply couldn't turtle anymore. But we'll see where this game is going to take us. So, it's a double Evo opener right here from DRG. He's looking to go ahead and play that very macro-focused style. Obviously, there is going to be a little bit of aggression here that Bomber could go for. I mean, even just saying the name Bomber gets me nostalgic, man. I'm not going to lie. Did, by the way, that third command center get spotted? Whoa, really? Really? Really, DRG? You are running with the Diva announcer? I've got the Diva announcer. I think I used it like 3 times. It is the most annoying thing to listen to after a couple... Oh my god, I can't believe it. Anyways, he did not see the third the third command center rather, so he doesn't know about the fact that this is a pretty greedy opener here for Bomber. But regardless, he feels safe enough to go ahead and get those double evos going anyway, then finally get the lair and also that Baneling nest. He has been really heavily focusing on drones, and I like this a lot. Actually, I really like this position here for DRG in general. He's been able to go straight up to 60 drones, relatively untroubled. 0 workers really went down, and Bomber is indeed playing something that I consider to be a little bit more old school. Now, maybe that's because of this map. I'm gonna have to cast more games of him to see whether or not that's actually the case. But nowadays, a lot of Terran players do not really feel comfortable grabbing a third base so very quickly. The thing is, Zerg has some very scary timings that they can hit in the early game, whereas if they attack, oftentimes you just don't have enough to hold it. So, I mean, it's pretty uncommon to push into a marine-based opener, because obviously bunkers are pretty good and all that, but it's still a risk to go ahead and take that third base really quickly. And then on top of that, when you do take the third this early on, right, and you don't really get yourself like a bunch of Hellions or maybe even a Banshee or a Liberator or whatever, Zerg players just simply get out of control really quick, and they are able to macro up a very scary amount of workers. Looks like though Bomber feels comfortable doing so. You can see his macro at the very least is still on point, sitting at a higher supply count right now than DRG. Alright, so it's not gonna be Mutaling Bane, guys. I'm sorry, it's not gonna be the old school Mutaling Bane. It looks like it's gonna be Hydraling Bane instead. Hydraling Bane, of course, very, very good. Against basically everything, especially against Widowmine-based openers. Hydras did receive a bit of a nerf in a patch about a half year or so ago at this point. They basically got their attack speed reduced by about 10%. Makes them a little bit less potent than they once were, but they are still very, very beefy units that can deal an awful lot of damage. And that's basically the nature of the Zerg armies right now. A lot of Zerg players love focusing on the very high damage output units, and even though they have very little hit points, oftentimes if you get yourself the correct fight, it can work out in your favor. 2-2 already coming up here for Bomber though, so we'll see where he's going to take us. Now, he is being a little bit passive here, I would say, with this Marine army. He also hasn't been doing any of the cleaning of the creep. He really does play like an old school Terran, man. I love it. He hasn't really cleared out any of the creep. It's just that the reason why the standard has changed, right, is that Zerg players became awfully good at just macroing up and getting this creep spread going. I mean, back in the days when Bomber was most successful, Zerg players would literally just get like 1 queen per hatchery, and that was it, right? And then people figured out, wait a second, you can make more queens? Like, what if you dedicate a couple queens to creep spreading instead? And that's exactly what a lot of Zergs are doing, obviously, right now. But you can see 8 minutes into the game, the creep is already very, very far out. And the longer that this goes, the harder it becomes to deal with. Couple of Zerglings and Banelings now, though, making their way towards that third base. I did see the one Zergling burrowing right there at the front, but apparently, in just a blink of an eye, a couple of those SCVs were blown up, and there's still some Lynx burrowed on the ground as well. Bomber not scanning the natural there. If maybe there would have been a burrow Baneling here, this could have been a disaster as well. 13 SCVs certainly is manageable, but it's one of those things that keeps this Terran player pinned back, whereas DRG has already been very, very happily macroing up the 4th base, and I think he may even be looking right now to grab a 5th as well. With the Infestation Pit finishing up, I think he's planning to go up towards a Hive here. Obviously, if you start up the Hive timing here around the same time as you get 2-2, you can get yourself 3-3 started really quickly as well. So we'll see if he decides to go ahead and do so here in just a little bit. But regardless, I like this position here for our Zerg a lot. This is one of those things that has been figured out really nicely by now, right? Now, what the old school Terran players could do really well as well is split their Marines, okay? So splitting against Banelings on creep is super hard to do, and it's a skill that the old school Terran players, like for example Bomber, mastered throughout many, many years. If you can split your Marines up perfectly, technically speaking, they should always trade really well against Banelings. Because obviously Banelings are basically more expensive than Marines are, and as long as you don't lose big clumps of Marines for free, you should always be in a really good position. Still though, there's like Lynx burrowed everywhere. DRG knows exactly as to what is going on. There's still that Overlord right here on the high ground as well. There's still the annoying Diva announcer too. But look at the vision that he's got. He knows exactly what he's going up against right now. Lings and Banes moving forward right now while the Terran army is distracted and ready to move back home. DRG is flooding into the natural right now, forcing this entire army from Bomber to retreat as well. There's still some units on the edge of the creep, but it looks like DRG wants to go for the counterattack instead. Looks like there was actually a bit of a pause right here, but regardless, obviously in the replay, we have none of those issues. Lings are burrowing everywhere, though. The reinforcing Terran units do get picked off as well, but I like this pullback here from DRG. He does not overextend, and that's really critical, although the Marines still chase down a lot of those very low hit points units. Yeah, maybe he should have actually just turned around then, and oh, I love the burrow. I love it. So sick. Going for the burrowed Banelings this time around to try and get that juicy connection. Some of the Hydras do make their way back home, but that was still, I think, a favorable trade right there for our Terran player. At the same time, though, a couple of Zerglings being a nuisance right here over at the third base. There's still Lings burrowed in the natural as well. DRG does not have any detection around this area, and instead he decides to push forward right here with that very scary Terran army. Obviously, with him having that really quick third base, he's going to be able to launch a much stronger assault here than normally. But here come the Lings and the Banelings. The Hydras are ready to connect right here as well. The Banelings now, though, forced to move off creep. Great control here on those Marines, but still beautiful connection there with a couple of burrowed Banes. At the same time, we did see all of those Lings unburrow as well. On the other side of the map, the natural of the Terran player is absolutely in shambles. So much damage is being done, and Bomber, he loses SCV after SCV as well. But man, did you see that one burrow Baneling move? That was so quick that I barely even didn't notice it. I mean, I noticed it after the Marines blew up. And we have obviously perfect vision here as well. Really nicely done. And still, this is why people still get missile turrets, man, even when it's not muta play. Still, these Zerglings are burrowed basically everywhere. Alright. So Bomber doesn't have a lot of workers anymore. He's got 49 workers versus 78 drones. DRG is looking really strong right now, but you gotta keep in mind, the trades he has been making are not cost efficient. In the grand scheme of things, even though apparently 41 SCVs were killed, he doesn't have that very scary Death Ball army. I gotta say though, so far I'm definitely more impressed here with the way that DRG is playing. Bomber though, staying in this game by the skin of his teeth, barely manages to stay alive right now, and he apparently wants to move forward once again. Now, Creep has been replaced quite nicely here as well. Immediately once this fight happens, the Zerglings do unburrow. Stimpack being utilized on as many of those Marines as possible, and apparently upon realizing that, we immediately do see the Zerg player just simply moving back out again as well. A couple of Vipers now have joined the fray. They're going to be very useful when it comes to that Marine siege tank based army. Blinding Cloud's obviously really good. Zerglings, once again, it looks like they're ready to set up a surround or maybe go for a bit of a run by. Bomber though playing a very old school style, and I kind of like it, to be honest, right? Cleanly sweeping up the map right now. He knows he's lost a lot, but he also just simply replaced so much of that army supply with more armies. So he lost a lot of SCVs this game. He lost 43 in total. At this point, he only really has 47 SCVs mining, which means that his army value right now is 153 in favor of Terran. That's like 50 more than Zerg right now. Well, here come those Lings and the Banes as well. A couple of those Blinding Clouds do go down on top of the siege tanks. Great control though on those Marines, splitting like an absolute champ. Bomber showing us what he practiced all those years ago, and apparently he's now moving forward as well. Still more Banelings are joining the fray. They also don't really get the connections that he's looking for. Stim once again being utilized. Bomber is smelling blood in the water. He wants to move forward right here, right now. If you can get on top of all of that Zerg production and you can pick up all of those Zerg units while they come out of their cocoons, oftentimes you can get into a wonderful spot. He doesn't care about the creep. He just stims forward and goes after as many of those units as possible. Still though, a lot of Zerg reinforcements do join in, but man, Bomber with the old school move decides to replace all of the lost supply, not with fresh SCVs, but with actual Marines instead. Oh my god, DRG was playing so wonderfully right there, but he did not read the scenario well. I've got a feeling that he probably felt really confident there too, right? He must have felt really confident when he realized how much damage he did. DRG looking on point, but Bomber's like, you know what? 40 SCVs is enough to max out on Marines, right? Decides to put all of his eggs in one basket, stims forward, splits like an absolute monster against the Banelings on creep, right? So Banelings with centrifugal hooks, with their speed upgrade on creep. And he manages to somehow, some way, still squeeze out a victory. Right when he finishes up the 3-3 upgrades before the Zerg managed to do so himself. What a fun game. I hope you enjoyed watching this as well. If you are new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get notifications as soon as I upload more. But for now, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, alright? And I will see you once again tomorrow for another video.